Hello and welcome to The Big Picture. The Armed Forces Special Powers Act has been a controversial act ever since it was passed in the Parliament in 1958. However, in the last decade or more, the voices against its misuse by the armed forces has been particularly loud. Irom Sharmila in Manipur has been on fast for the last 12 years seeking its repeal. The Government of India appointed Commission under Justice B.P. Jeevan Reddy in 2006 recommended that the act be repealed. Some sections are demanding at least certain amendments to take away what are seen as arbitrary powers and safeguards to the army personnel under the act. Meanwhile, even voices from the Northeast, including several chief ministers, have demanded its repeal, which has been endorsed by Jammu and Kashmir Chief Minister Omar Abdullah. Former Home Minister P. Chidambaram, who was also in its favour, has now come out openly with the reason behind the lack of action of the government. His remarks the other day during a public lecture that the civilian government was finding it difficult to amend the act because of the rigidity and opposition of the army to any amendment has surprised and shocked people. What does this statement indicate? How does this reflect on the civilian government and also on the army? Will government continue to allow its hands to be tied to make the law more humanitarian, as Chidambaram says? We will discuss all this today with Ajay Prasad, former Defence Secretary in the Government of India, Sanjoy Hazarika, Director, Centre for Northeast Studies at Jamia, Millia, Islamia, and also one of the members of Justice Jeevan Reddy Commission, Lieutenant General Kadyan, retired Vice Chief of Army Staff, and Usha Ramanathan, independent law researcher. Welcome to all of you. First, let me go to Sanjoy Hazarika. Sanjoy, you were part of the commission, Justice B.P. Jeevan Reddy Commission. It's been now almost 7 years since you people gave the report, and now this statement has come from Mr. Chidambaram that, their hands are tied because the army chief and the army doesn't allow them to even make any amendments.
That's nothing new. It's been, when we submitted the report,
right,
the strongest opposition came from the Defence Ministry and the Army.
Right.
And the then Chief of Staff put on record, on file,
right,
opposition to any amendment, any change,
right,
in the Act. Now, why is this coming up now? It's not coming up because people want AFSPA to be reviewed.
Right.
It's coming up because the Justice Verma Committee on that horrendous rape incident said that AFSPA needed to be reviewed because you can't have a situation where molestation, rape are conducted or carried out by members of the armed forces and it's not justiciable.
Right. So you think
it's as simple as that, and there have been three committees. Let me just finish. There are three. The vice president, current vice president, was the head of a committee that recommended the repeal, which is the confidence building measures for Kashmir.
Right.
At that time, the Moily Commission, Administrative Reforms Commission, has recommended its repeal.
Yes.
We are just a committee.
Yes.
ARC.
Okay. Mr. Ajay Prasad, is this a problem? See, the fact that a union minister comes out openly and says that we cannot do anything, the army chiefs are opposing it, we can't even make it humanitarian. Sanjoy says that the defense ministry has been opposed to it. What is your opinion on this? Do you think the defense ministry is so rigid that it cannot even allow some humanitarian amendments to be made?
No, personally, I am not at all in a position to say that nothing can be done about it. I feel personally that a number of changes can be made to make the act more humanitarian.
Right.
At the same time, I would also like to say that the army, which is functioning in rather difficult circumstances, both in J&K and in the Northeast, feels that they need some protection. It is they are working in a very different and peculiar circumstances, and they feel that under the situation, they need some protection for various acts of omission and commission that may be brought against them. So I think it's a very delicate balance which the army and the government have to strike. But yes, there are a number of things, and I entirely agree with what Sanjoy Hazarika said earlier, that if not repealed, there is certainly a case for making amendments to make the act more humanitarian.
Sanjoy, what is your view? Is it just some amendments which are necessary to it, or do you think it has to be completely repealed? Sanjoy?
See, the act has become an object of hate and suspicion in the Northeast. That's what the Reddy committee said.
Right.
And my own view is that you want to create political space. This is a great opportunity because you've got every other law under the book to throw at insurgents. And let me point out a few facts. How can an act prevent people from being prosecuted for rape and murder? This is the position of the Supreme Court.
Absolutely.
Of as far back as last year. You can't protect people who are guilty of rape and murder.
Yes.
And this is a case that the Defense Ministry, rather the Army, is contesting the CBI on. The government is fighting each other.
Absolutely.
Departments of the government on a case as far back as 2000 in Kashmir.
Right.
And my own perception on this is very clear. The Army needs a legal mechanism to function. Fine. We propose that in the Reddy committee. They don't want to even look at it.
Okay. Okay. Lieutenant General Kadyan.
So then where is the meeting point?
Okay. General Kadyan, where is the meeting point? You need certain protection, fine, but this kind of rigid opposition, why does it happen?
Girish, first let me make a general point. This AFSPA has become a very favorite whipping boy with most of the civil groups, most of the politicians today. In a democracy, decision making is a collective responsibility.
Right.
This is my general point I want to make. What comes out of the decision making room is a decision and not deliberations.
Right.
To that extent, Mr. Chidambaram's statement made in the IDSA is a surprise. That he is naming one of the stakeholders.
Exactly.
That's point number one.
Yes.
And coming from a person of Mrs. Chidambaram's intellect and acuity, it is even more surprising.
And stature. And the position he holds in the government.
One gets a strong suspicion that the statement is more politically motivated than motivated by the national security. Now the next point. This act came into being in 1958. Right. It was not at Army's behest, not on their instigation, not on their goading. The government felt, the parliament, sovereign body of the country, took a decision. They felt that if the soldiers have to be deployed in a situation where the conditions are not normal, they are beyond the control of the local authorities, the army needs to be deployed, the soldiers need some kind of a legal protection so that the army doesn't get entangled into a web of judicial system. Now, when we say amendment, even Justice Verma committee, this wasn't the charter. They were basically tasked to review the sexual assault laws.
Yes.
But they went beyond their...
But there have been any number of cases of sexual assault on women by the armed forces.
No, that's the statistics say that 97% of the allegations are false. The other tragedy is that everybody who is operating with a gun in J&K in a uniform is called a soldier. Everybody is not army there. The point I am making is that Justice Verma's observations have been rather unfair to the army. It is based on the assumption, firstly, that this act is a license to kill and to rape and to do sexual assaults, which is not true. Second, it also based on the assumption that the army will deal leniently with its members who are offenders of this kind of rape, which is not true. Army has the highest stake in ensuring.
I think Sanjoy wants to respond to. Yes, Sanjoy, you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I want to make a couple of points here. See, it's all very well to say that civil society and so on are agitated about it or picking up on this issue. The fact is, this law was put into place in 1958 when there was one insurgency, which is the Naga movement.
Right.
Now, the test of a law, as I kept saying during the committee's hearings with the army and so on, is how effective is it? So I asked, actually at the army headquarters, I asked, would you say the situation is worse today than it was in 1958? And the answer was yes. I said, if the answer is yes, then your law has failed. And you have to be looking, you have to look at why it's failed.
Okay.
And as far as this point is being made that the Chidambaram has made a political statement, of course he's a political statement. He is a politician. Do you expect him not to make a political statement on such a sensitive issue?
Right. Right. Yes. Yes.
I mean, this is something very naive.
Okay.
I fully respect the views expressed.
Effectiveness of the law. The fact that it has become worse, the situation has become worse, as Sanjoy says, means that the law has not been effective.
Okay.
How do you defend that?
No, this statement, I respect what Mr. Hazarika says, but this is based on the assumption that the army is there to solve the problem. Unfortunately, that is not the truth. In a democracy, army can never be the solution to a problem which is not military in nature.
Right.
The problem is not military. There are political, economic, psychological, social angles involved. Army at best can create a situation, can keep the situation depressed, the militancy depressed, where civil administration can continue to function. That
I think let me get Usha. Yes, you heard all that. Yeah. What is your take on this? Yeah. The one he says in a very important statement, General Kadyan made that 97% of the cases which allegations made against the armed forces on these atrocities or whatever it is on the women and children, the 97% are false.
Actually, I think we need to go back to what that 100% is about.
Yes.
This is within the grievance redressal mechanism.
Yes.
Where a lot of the time you're going to find that people have a grievance and then they say, no, it doesn't matter. This is not how we deal with it. We are talking about serious offenses that have happened over this period of time. I just want to make 2-3 quick points on this. The first is that I don't know why the army wants to remain there and why they are so keen on being there, because actually I would have thought they keep talking about the morale of the army if anything is done against the armed forces outside of their own little world. And I would have thought that having this kind of response from its civil society, as in people who are all rejecting it in its current role. See, if you read the report of which Sanjoy is also a part, you find that there are some people there who said, keep the army on for certain purposes because we need their assistance, but we cannot have the impunity that the army brings with it.
Right.
That's what the AFSPA is bringing.
That is the problem. That is the issue.
It's a huge issue. The second thing is, this question has come up now again. It's what Justice Verma has said is about reviewing AFSPA.
Right.
He has also said, and I think this is extremely significant, that rape can never be a part of duty.
Exactly.
So the question of keeping a person who is accused of rape and their investigation and their trial within an agency, which is already telling us that there is a certain prejudice because we don't want to demoralize our own people, that will not work. Thirdly, there have been statements made loud and clear, whether, after Manorama, where is the Manorama case today? Why is it that we still have it hanging around in the Supreme Court with a sealed cover? Right. Why is it that we are not allowing for that to move and for it to be resolved? In fact, that's causing the army far more harm in terms of its reputation than almost anything else. Why did it need? Are you telling me that the 9 women who in Assam who stripped themselves nude and stood before
Manipur.
In Manipur, yes, before the Kangla fort and said, army rape us. Do you think they did it because it was some kind of a civil society action? It's a statement of very deep frustration and disenchantment. Now, if that's not going to be, how much more do people need to say? And let's face it, this has come up at a time when the idea of impunity has grown. In 1998, when the International Criminal Court was being discussed, people didn't even know that such a word existed. It's grown, and the armed forces, the army in Jammu and Kashmir, in the Northeast, are at the center of this idea of impunity.
Okay.
Does the army really want this?
Okay, Usha, I think you raised very important issues, but we need to go into a short break. We'll come back and continue the discussion. There are several other issues which needs to be tackled. Please keep watching. We'll be back very soon. Welcome back. We are discussing the AFSPA law and asking why the government's hands are tied by the army. Ajay Prasad, Mr. Ajay Prasad, the question is that, when a union minister of such a senior ranking like Mr. Chidambaram, who was the home minister who had tried to bring about certain amendments to this law, when he stands up and says in public that, our hands are tied, what does it mean, to the entire process of the governance itself? Where does the civilian government, the responsibility of the civilian government, the role of the army, don't you think very serious questions have been raised by this statement?
Of course it has. But let me just go back to a statement that was made a little while earlier.
Right.
And said, why does the army want to remain in these areas?
Right.
Now, let me make it clear. The army is not there because it wants to be there. The army is there because the government
Mr. Ajay Prasad
wanted it to be there and operate in that area.
Government wanted it to be there, but now government says that please go or please allow us to make some amendments. It's not allowing the government to make amendments.
You see, this is what I'm saying, that if you want the army to be there and operate under these conditions, certain amount of protection to the army is necessary. Now, what should it be? Now, it is nobody's case that for offences like sexual assault and rape, there should be impunity. I think nobody can make that case.
Absolutely.
But for various other things, some protection is required. Now, where is this balance to be struck? And it needs to be struck. No, and therefore, I said it right in the beginning that amendments are necessary to make the act more humanitarian and more acceptable to the civil society.
Mr. Ajay Prasad, my question is this. You have been in the government, you have been secretary to the government, and when government faces this kind of a situation, doesn't it look very helpless? And is it what kind of a message is being sent that a government is helpless because it wants to do something, but its hands are tied by its own, one of the wings of its own government?
You see, if the government, the decision-making process in the government is that if the government, the cabinet is convinced that something needs to be done, it can certainly do that, and the army can be brought around to accept that point of view. But I think the government must also exhibit a strong will that they are willing to make those changes.
Absolutely. Okay. Sanjoy, yes, strong will. We have not seen that strong will so far. Sanjoy?
Let me just make two quick points.
Yes.
The first is that as far as AFSPA is concerned, it can be in place only after an area is declared disturbed.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
Now, until some years ago, the state government and the center either could declare it disturbed. Now the center can declare it unilaterally, which is how it's going. Because if you look at conditions on the ground, not one soldier has fallen in combat in Nagaland in the last 5 years.
Okay.
So, and the state government is on record demanding the removal of the act from the state.
Okay.
The center refuses to do it.
You mean the Disturbed Areas Act?
As far as the amendments are concerned, the Home Ministry, no, the Disturbed Areas Act and the Armed Forces Special Powers, one would precede the other, obviously.
Absolutely, yeah.
And as far as the act itself is concerned, I think what Justice Verma said is that in areas of, as far as sexual harassment, rape and molestation are concerned, there is no question. You cannot have an act that allows people to get away with that.
Absolutely. So they need to be...
Listen, the 97%, the 97% that he talks about, how far back in time is he going? Is he going back to the village burnings and the regroupings in Nagaland and in Mizoram in the 1950s, 60s? The fact that the Indian Air Force strafed, bombed a city, the town of Aizawl in 1966 between 2nd and 3rd of March, how far back do you want to go?
Okay.
So, this is something that we cannot accept.
Okay. Lieutenant General Kadyan. Yes.
Firstly, I would like to reinforce what Mr. Ajay Prasad said in response to Madam's statement, that it is not the army that wants to stay in these areas. Let me tell you, both from my experience and my conviction, a soldier is trained and tasked to handle a conventional war situation where he clearly knows who is the friend and who is the foe.
Right.
It is the last choice for an army to get involved into insurgency areas. Why it is still there, let me read from Jeevan Reddy's report and let me quote. While recommending repeal of the act, he says, overwhelming desire of an overwhelming majority of the Northeast region is that the army should remain. This is the exact wording I am reading.
Yes.
Second, let me first finish. The second point which was made was that the army's discipline or the court martials are within the system.
Right.
Let me tell you that when there is an accused, not a single member of the court belongs to that unit or that local formation. They all come from outside in the 12 lakhs army.
All these are well known.
No, it's not well known that in a court martial the accused has full freedom to hire a civilian lawyer. The law permits it, and many of them do hire. So the system is as fair as it can be. To assume that
I want both of you, Usha and Sanjoy, to react to this. First, Usha, he says that the Justice Jeevan Reddy Commission. First, let me get actually Sanjoy on this because he's part of the committee.
I'll just make a little statement on that because I think if you read one part of the statement,
I missed something.
I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you, Sanjay.
Yeah. No. If you read one part of a statement and then leave the other for a huge gap and then say it like it's another statement, it would be inaccurate. What it did say was that a large number of people did say that they would like the army to remain but for AFSPA to go. It was in one, it was a statement. It was a continuous statement.
Sanjay, what General Kadyan was pointing out was a part of the report of your committee saying that an overwhelming majority of the people in Northeast want the army to stay.
But the act to go.
Yeah. Act to go. Okay.
So but the act to go.
I said that. That committee said that the act should be repealed, but overwhelming majority want the army to
learned our grammar, we were taught that the comma is different.
Say that the
army people said very clearly, you cannot have impunity, you cannot have immunity.
Right, right. Anyway, Usha, the larger issue now. Now that we know why the government is not able to make this kind of even bring about amendments, forget repealing the law, bring about certain amendments. Now where do we go? Now you have no choice now. The government says that we are helpless.
I actually don't think the government is saying it is helpless. It's showing its power by saying that they will decide what they want to do and do it when they want to do it. I don't think Mr. Chidambaram has in my reckoning, he doesn't have a reputation of being a helpless person or of expressing helplessness. So this is really a statement of power and saying that this is not what we wish to do. There's a second thing. The Verma Commission committee report shook them more than they expected anything would shake them.
Right.
Not only because they gave it in time, but also because there were a large number of women's groups who've been working for over 30, 40 years on this issue, who raised these issues with the Verma Committee, and the Verma Committee put in many of those because they come from experience, they heard them. Now, I don't think the government expected that, and this seems to me a way of saying, because one of the things that they did say, see, I think it's significant that Justice Verma was the Chief Justice and a part of the bench which upheld the Armed Forces Special Powers Act in '97.
Right.
But, people grow up and they learn that there are, that they made a mistake.
16 years is a long time.
16 years, but maybe this is the first time he got a chance. I don't know. I'm not here to defend Justice Verma, but to say that, if there is a process of learning, and if that process of learning leads you to lessening impunity and to increasing the protection of people, it makes a difference.
What is the problem? If there are cases, when there are cases of this kind of excesses on women and by the armed forces, why can't they be tried? What is the problem in them being tried, like what Justice Verma suggests or what people like Usha suggest, that they should come under the normal laws?
Girish, the problem is
why should they get this kind of,
Again, it is based on the assumption that the army tries to protect the offenders. That's not the case. The problem would be then the army will keep getting so entangled in the legal system. You know how our judicial system, Manorama case is still going on after 10 years.
Why is it going on after 10 years?
The commanding officer's attention will be more in the court than on the operation. Actually, if you accept that fact, it is anti-national security as far as I am concerned.
The Manorama case is going on because the armed forces...
You guys are in denial. You refuse.
Sanjay.
Yeah.
You guys are constantly in denial. You refuse to come to court, deny it under the armed forces. In 54 years of the AFSPA, there has been one prosecution because the center has not given sanction. Clause 6.
Let me, Sanjay,
protects everybody who does anything.
Sanjay, let me get Ajay Prasad in on this. Ajay Prasad, Sanjay says that the government doesn't give sanction. Is it true? Ajay Prasad?
In many cases, yes, the government has not given sanctions in many cases. I don't know whether it has not given in any. I wouldn't be able to comment on that.
Okay,
Just
but you know,
why
is the government so rigid in giving sanctions? Mr. Ajay Prasad? I mean, is there a logical reason why do you agree with General Kadyan that this will become anti-national security, and it will lead to the commanders being constantly in the court instead of commanding their unit? Is that the reason?
No, you see, one thing you have to see that what the Verma committee also said, that in cases of sexual assault and all, it should be taken as a breach of command, and the commanding officer should be held responsible. Now that creates a problem, because a person goes on leave and he commits certain crime of this nature, and then how do you hold the commanding officer responsible for this?
Why have you,
now, this kind of situation can lead to a lot of controversials.
Okay. Usha and General, very quick last words.
Yeah, no, I'm just wondering why this idea of sanctioning is being held in I think Sanjay is also asking.
Anyway.
Yeah, sanction and impunity are two things which simply don't make sense here at all.
I think we have completely run out of time. Very quickly, one word.
Anyone who has been found guilty of either murder or rape or anything has been punished by the army. I have names here.
Okay.
They have been dismissed.
Sorry, sir, we have completely run out of time. But the fact is that, completely run out of time, Sanjay. The fact is that this is a controversial law, and there are a lot of reasons why there needs to be a relook at it. The fact that a union minister has said that it needs to be made humanitarian is reason enough for the government to go ahead and do something about it. Thanks to all my guests, Mr. Ajay Prasad, Sanjoy Hazarika, Lieutenant General Raj Kadyan and Usha Ramanathan. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue on The Big Picture, same time on Monday.